We're going to start with an exercise. I want everybody to get ready to write something down. Either take out a piece of paper and a pen, or just mentally get ready to go through the activity of writing something out in your mind. I want you to think about a difficulty that you've been having, a challenge or an opportunity, a decision you're facing. All right, go ahead and start writing about it. I'll give you a moment. Y'all have something in mind. We're working on it. All right, now let's pause here, just a minute. Pause. Consider what you just wrote. Did you use the words I, me, or my? As in, were you thinking about yourself from the first person perspective? I'm guessing yes, that's pretty normal. And especially if you were to keep going, those words, it's going to show up somewhere. So our default lens on life is through this first person, self-immersed perspective. And we can choose to exit this perspective in order to see things more clearly and make better decisions. I'm a psychology professor, organizational psychology in particular. So my goal is to help people and organizations to be more effective, help people live their best lives at work and personally. I've studied the way people think, work, and interact to solve problems. I'm going to tell you something you already know. We humans, we can be dysfunctional sometimes, right? I mean, we're also amazing in many ways, but we also have predictable biases, hang-ups, and shortcomings. Well, why? And what can we do about it? I've come to the conclusion that the core issue that we have the most direct, immediate control over is this self-immersed default lens that we have on the world. Now, what's wrong with being self-immersed? Sometimes nothing. Other times it can really get in the way. See, when we're self-immersed, as compared to being self-distanced, we're more likely to see threats than challenges. We're more likely to overreact, show bias. We double down on our decisions. We become fixated on how to do something instead of whether we should be doing it in the first place or what else we could be doing or why. This self-immersion bends reality to fit our precious egos while allowing us to believe that we're seeing the truth. So we need a way to step out of this. We need a tool that we can use right here in the moment or in anticipation of a difficult or stressful task to help get us out of this situation. So what do we do? Fundamentally, what we need is an observer's perspective. This is why it's so much easier to see a friend's problem or solution than it is to see your own. And it's a big reason why athletes and executives have coaches. I mean, sure, sometimes we need the coach's relevant expertise for a particular topic, but oftentimes what the coach really has to offer is this. Coach is not me. See, we often have the information that we need. We often potentially have the most awareness, but we're just too immersed to see the situation clearly. So we need to be able to exit this immersed self and take an outside perspective. So that's what becoming our own coach can do for us. Now, how do we do this? Well, we can borrow from psychology, which has this concept called psychological distancing. So we can become someone else, somewhere else, or sometime else in our minds. Let me explain a little bit more. So when we take psychological distance on something, we see it differently. We have a different perspective. We see it as more distinct from ourselves, separate from ourselves. As a result, we tend to think about things more in terms of more abstract, higher level features. It lets us see the forest through the trees. So let's take these different tools one at a time. We'll start with being someone else. A solution becomes obvious when we approach the problem from a language perspective. How do I not be me? Well, we simply replace the language to change the thinking, but what do we replace it with? Maybe you remember when the gymnast Simone Biles took herself out of the Tokyo Olympics. It was a gut-wrenching decision, but it was a wise one as it turned out. She described it this way. She said, "Simone, chill. We're not doing it." She's talking to herself in the third person, as though her executive control is separate from who she is as a person. So we can use this third person perspective, or we can take on the persona of somebody else, like Coach, or in the case of some recent research, Batman. All right, so check this out. There's an interesting study. 4 and 6-year-olds were asked to complete it was a boring task. Just all it required was sustained attention and mental effort on a boring task. 4 and 6-year-olds, right? You get the idea? So some of them were given a cape, and they were periodically reminded to say, is Batman working hard? Another group, the self-immersed group, they were told to ask themselves, am I working hard? Lo and behold, the little Batmen were actually harder workers than the self-immersed condition. There's other research that shows similar findings in adults. Not in terms of pretending to be Batman, but this idea of using third-person speech instead of first-person speech. I'm reminded of a quote I saw the other day. The most important thing in life is to be yourself. Unless you can be Batman. Always be Batman. I mean, obviously, in jest somewhat. But all right, so let's take this back to the exercise we did in the very beginning, where you were trying to think about a problem or an opportunity or a decision. So in all likelihood, especially if you were to continue fleshing out that example, you were going to use the words I, me, or my somewhere. So try this again. Next time you get a chance, go back and try it with the third-person perspective. So just using your name, he, she, or they, or Batman if you like, whatever floats your boat. But if you do one thing differently today or tomorrow, give this a try. All right, so that was one tool. Our next tool is to be somewhere else. We can think about this like being a fly on the wall, like fly on the wall watching us, right? So the twist is now we're a fly on the wall looking at our former self, so we have that spatial distance from ourself. Bill Urey is a famous negotiator. He likes to think about it in terms of being on the balcony, watching himself as part of a negotiation, instead of imagining himself being in his chair, seeing the negotiation through his own eyes. It helps him get out of his own frame of reference and his own emotions. There's a lot of research on this idea of taking a mental step back to help us process challenging emotions. University of Michigan psychologist Ethan Kross has run a slew of studies on this. In one of his earliest ones, he had participants come into his lab and think about a painful life event that they had. He had a self-distancing group and a self-immersed group. The self-distancing group, he had them replay the event over again as though it was happening to a distant other person. The self-immersed group, he had replay the event as though it was happening to them all over again. So you have this image of the first group kind of imagining this happening to almost somebody else. So it happens to be them, but they had this kind of detachment from it. Whereas then the other group, the second group, it's like they're seeing it again through their own eyes. He also asked them to think about why they felt the way they did. At the end of the study, the people who were in the self-distance group had a lot less negative emotion and a lot less anger afterwards compared to the self-immersed group. So give it a try. You can be a fly on the wall. You can imagine you're on the balcony. But the point is, you take a mental step back from the situation and appraise it from a distance using this concept of spatial distancing. All right, we have one more tool left, right? So we can be sometime else. Jeff Bezos gives us a nice example of this, a nice thought experiment that we can all do. He noticed the rapid growth of the internet in the 90s, and he faced a crucial decision. Do I stay in my current lucrative job or quit and take a chance on starting a new business that could grow with the internet? He puts it this way. He says, I knew when I was 80, I would not regret having tried this. So if you unpack that a bit, what he's really saying is he knew that he would regret not trying more than he would regret trying and possibly failing. There's research that supports this future frame of reference idea. Hal Hershfield, he does this in a virtual reality lab at UCLA. And so one of the things that he found is when he has people interact with an avatar that's an aged version of themselves, they make wiser financial decisions. To kind of parse this more finely, he also found that when he had college students mentally become that future version of themselves, instead of just thinking about what's in their future self's best interest, they were twice as likely to open a savings account. So the trick is this. You want to become your future self. Try it on. What's that really feel like? What's your position in life? What matters to you? Make the decision there, then rewind back and execute. So we have 3 tools that we can use to become our own coach. We can become someone else, somewhere else, or sometime else. Who, where, when. These mental manipulations, as you can see, they don't take very long, only a moment, but they can lead to snap insights that you didn't have before and a more clear-headed perspective on things. The research shows they can reduce anxiety, helps people process negative emotions, improves learning and performance on stressful and challenging tasks. They give us a wiser perspective on life. So here's our homework. The next time we're kind of stuck or we're worried, we're facing an important decision, just try one of these tools and you can become your own coach. Thanks.